Welcome back to the channel where we remember the women who once lit up the screen, the stage, and the hearts of millions. Today, we bring together both parts of a haunting series, honoring over 25 American female celebrities who tragically died in plane crashes. These weren't slow goodbyes or illnesses that gave time to prepare. These were sudden, violent endings, flights filled with hope and plans that ended in silence, smoke, and sorrow. Some of these women were legends. Others were rising stars. All of them were taken far too soon. They boarded planes for concerts, work, vacations, or quick trips back home. But they never got to finish their journey. In an instant, their stories were cut short, and the people waiting for them were left with unanswered questions and shattered hearts. These weren't just celebrities. They were daughters, mothers, friends, and artists who carried light into the world. Let's take a moment to remember their final flights, the lives they lived, and the pain their sudden loss left behind. Today, we remember Aaliyah Dana Houghton, a gifted American singer and actress who died far too young in one of the most devastating moments in music history. Just 22 years old, Aaliyah lost her life on August 25, 2001, when the small private plane she boarded in the Bahamas crashed shortly after takeoff. She and 8 others had just wrapped up filming the music video for her song Rock the Boat and were eager to return to the United States. But the plane, a twin-engine Cessna 402, was dangerously overloaded and piloted by someone who wasn't properly licensed and was later found to have drugs and alcohol in his system. Witnesses reported that the passengers were warned about the wait, but they insisted on leaving, unaware of the tragedy ahead. The aircraft lifted just briefly before nose-diving into the ground, catching fire, and killing everyone almost instantly. Aaliyah suffered a fatal blow to the head, severe burns, and was in such shock that even if she had survived the crash, doctors later said she likely would not have made it. Her death stunned the world, not only because of how sudden and avoidable it was, but because of the bright, rising future it destroyed. Born in Brooklyn in 1979 and raised in Detroit, Aaliyah began singing at a young age, appearing on Star Search at just 10 and performing with Gladys Knight. At 12, she signed her first record deal and rose to fame with her debut album Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, followed by her breakthrough second album, 1 in a Million. Her smooth voice, confidence, and groundbreaking sound made her a leader in R&B and pop. She made her acting debut in Romeo Must Die, and just before her death, she had starred in Queen of the Damned and was set to appear in sequels to The Matrix. Her song Try Again made history as the first to hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 based only on radio airplay. She had it all: talent, work ethic, and a calm, graceful presence that made people love her instantly. But behind the fame, her life had been complicated and painful, including a controversial and illegal marriage to R. Kelly when she was just 15. Still, Aaliyah kept pushing forward, focusing on her career and trying to protect her privacy. In the days before her death, her family wasn't with her for the video shoot, the only time they'd ever miss one, and it haunted them. Her brothers said they couldn't understand why they weren't there, wondering if they could have stopped it. Aaliyah was buried in a silver casket, and 22 white doves were released at her funeral, one for each year of her life. Fans turned posters into memorials, and her music only grew in love and impact after she was gone. She wasn't just a singer, she was a symbol of grace, strength, and possibility. And though her life was cut short, her voice, her style, and her presence still echo with those who remember the day the sky took her away. Carole Lombard, the brilliant American actress whose life was cut short in one of the most heartbreaking tragedies in Hollywood history. Carole, just 33 years old, died on January 16, 1942, when TWA Flight 3 crashed into the side of Potosi Mountain in Nevada. She had been returning home from a patriotic war bond rally in Indiana, where she'd raised over $2 million in a single night to support the troops. Despite her mother and press agent urging her to take the train due to fear of flying, Carole insisted on boarding the flight to get back to her husband, actor Clark Gable, more quickly. Sadly, shortly after takeoff from Las Vegas, the plane veered off course, missing a key beacon that had been turned off as a wartime precaution, and slammed into the mountain, killing all 22 people on board, including Carole, her mother, and 15 Army servicemen. It was a devastating blow to Hollywood and to the country, which was already reeling from the early days of World War II. Gable, shattered by her death, joined the Army Air Forces soon after to honor her memory. Carole was born Jane Alice Peters in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in 1908, and was raised in Los Angeles by her mother after her parents separated. She was a tomboy who loved sports, and at age 12, she caught the eye of a director while playing baseball, landing her first movie role. But her journey was far from easy. A near-fatal car accident in 1927 left her face scarred, and though many thought her career was over, she fought her way back, learning how to use makeup and lighting to hide the scar and embracing comedy as her path to stardom. She became known for her quick wit, bold attitude, and fearless performances, especially in screwball comedies like 20th Century, My Man Godfrey, and To Be or Not to Be, her final film, which was still in post-production at the time of her death. Off-screen, she was known for being warm, down-to-earth, and unpretentious, beloved by everyone from co-stars to studio crew. Her marriage to Clark Gable, whom she adored deeply, was one of Hollywood's most talked-about love stories. Lombard was more than just a glamorous star. She was a pioneer, one of the first actresses to go freelance, negotiate her own contracts, and command one of the highest salaries in the industry. She was sharp, funny, and fiercely independent. But her life ended far too soon, not in the lights of a studio or on the red carpet, but on a cold, dark mountainside during a journey back from a mission of hope. Her tragic death broke hearts across the nation, and even President Roosevelt honored her with a tribute. Though she's been gone for over 80 years, Carole Lombard's legacy lives on, not just in her films, but in the memory of a woman who was full of life, love, laughter, and courage until her very last day. Berenson, an American actress, model, and gifted photographer, whose life ended in one of the most horrific tragedies in modern history. She was just 53 when she died on September 11, 2001, as a passenger aboard American Airlines Flight 11, the very first plane hijacked and flown into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. She had been returning home to Los Angeles after spending time in Cape Cod, unaware that her final journey would end in such terror. Listed on the flight manifest as Berenson Perkins, she became one of the thousands of innocent lives lost that day. What makes her death even more heartbreaking is the cruel way it happened. Her plane, full of everyday people just like her, was overtaken by terrorists and turned into a weapon. There's no gentle way to tell that story. It's shocking, it's senseless. And for her sons, Oz and Elvis, who had already lost their father Anthony Perkins to AIDS in 1992, it was another unimaginable blow. Barry had been by Anthony's side through everything: his fame, his struggles with his identity, his illness, and she never wavered. She took care of him in his final days, holding his hand when he passed. Just 9 years later, her boys were left without either parent. Barry's final moments are hard to even imagine. Was she sitting near the front, terrified as the hijackers took control? Was she in the back, trying to comfort someone else? We'll never really know what those last minutes were like for her, but knowing the way she lived, gentle, kind, full of love, it's painful to think about how violently her life was taken. Born in 1948 in Manhattan, Barry came from a famous family. Her grandmother was legendary fashion designer Elsa Schiaparelli, and her sister Marissa Berenson was a high fashion model and actress. But Barry never relied on her name. She made her own way, starting off as a model before moving behind the camera as a photographer. Her work was published in top magazines like Vogue, Life, and Newsweek, and she had an eye for raw beauty and emotion. Later, she turned to acting, appearing in several films like Remember My Name, Winter Kills, and Cat People, often sharing the screen with her husband Anthony. Their marriage wasn't what most would call typical. Anthony struggled privately with being a closeted gay man, but they deeply loved each other, raised 2 sons, and stuck together through everything. Barry was never the loudest voice in the room, but everyone who knew her said the same thing. She was full of life, grounded, and incredibly kind. After Anthony's death, she quietly carried on, focusing on her children and her art. On that terrible day in September 2001, The world didn't just lose a passenger on a flight. It lost a woman who gave everything to the people she loved, a mother who had already seen so much pain, and someone who deserved so much better than the way her life ended. Her name is now etched in stone at the 9/11's memorial, but her real legacy lives in the hearts of her sons, the beauty she captured through her camera, and in the memories of those lucky enough to know her. Berenson was more than a tragedy. She was a life that mattered, and she should never be forgotten. Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy, the woman who once seemed to step out of a dream and into one of America's most tragic real-life stories, a graceful, stylish publicist whose life was cut short in the most heartbreaking way. On July 16, 1999, just 33 years old, Carolyn died alongside her husband John F. Kennedy Jr. and her sister Lauren when their small plane crashed into the Atlantic Ocean on a dark, hazy night off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. John was piloting the aircraft, even though he was still recovering from a broken ankle, and investigators later said he likely became disoriented in the night sky, losing control of the plane. That crash shattered the lives of 3 young people and stunned a nation that had watched Carolyn and John's marriage play out under a harsh spotlight. In those final moments, as the plane fell from the sky into the black water below, it's almost unbearable to imagine the fear they must have felt, especially Carolyn, who had been reluctant to even take that flight. She had told friends she didn't want to go to the wedding they were flying to, and only agreed after Lauren offered to come along. It's the kind of choice no one thinks will end a life. And yet, just hours later, they were gone. Their bodies were found 5 days later, still strapped in their seats at the bottom of the ocean. Carolyn's ashes were scattered at sea, a quiet ending to a life that was never truly allowed to be quiet. She had grown up in Connecticut, the youngest of 3 sisters, and was raised Catholic by her mother after her parents' divorce. She was smart, fun, and deeply loved by friends who remember her infectious laugh and down-to-earth kindness. She studied education at Boston University and worked her way up at Calvin Klein, going from a salesgirl in a mall to handling major celebrity clients. It was there that her elegance and presence were noticed, qualities that later made her a fashion icon. Her minimalist look, clean lines, neutral colors, quiet luxury became legendary. But what made her truly unforgettable wasn't just what she wore. It was how she carried herself through a storm of constant cameras and headlines. When she married John in a secret, candlelit wedding in 1996, she instantly became one of the most watched women in the world. But the spotlight was cruel. The paparazzi followed her everywhere. She hated the attention, often feeling like she couldn't breathe. She once told a friend that the only way to avoid being photographed was to leave the house before 7 a.m. Her relationship with John was full of love, but not without strain, fueled by stress, constant public pressure, and rumors that only made things harder. In her final months, Carolyn had quit her job, stepped back from the public eye, and tried to find some peace, though she was said to be exhausted and emotionally worn out. Some stories claim they were arguing, others that they were trying to heal and had started counseling. What's certain is that they didn't deserve the way their story ended, plunging into the sea on a summer night, their futures erased in seconds. Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy didn't ask to be a public figure, didn't chase fame, and never gave interviews. She just wanted a quiet life, to love the man she married, and to stay true to herself. But the world wouldn't let her be. In the end, she became a symbol, not just of beauty and elegance, but of how fragile life really is. Her death wasn't just tragic because of how it happened, but because of everything it took from her. Her future, her chance to be more than just Mrs. Kennedy, her voice, which we never got to truly hear. Carolyn deserved so much more. She remains frozen in time now, forever young, forever beautiful, and forever mourned. Gwen Shamblin Lara, a woman who built an empire through her Christian weight loss program and church, but whose life ended in a tragic and terrifying plane crash that left no survivors. On May 29, 2021, Gwen, her husband Joe Lara, and 5 other trusted members of their Remnant Fellowship Church boarded a small Cessna Citation jet headed to Palm Beach, Florida. Just minutes after takeoff from Smyrna Airport near Nashville, the plane climbed into cloudy skies, and within moments, things went horribly wrong. Joe, who was piloting the aircraft, lost control due to spatial disorientation, a condition where the brain misinterprets motion and balance in poor visibility. As the jet made a series of confused turns, climbs, and drops, it finally went into a steep, nose-down spiral and slammed straight into Percy Priest Lake. The impact was so severe that the plane was shattered, and all 7 passengers were killed instantly. The wreckage revealed no mechanical problems, just one man overwhelmed by the clouds, unable to see, unable to recover, and taking 6 others with him. Gwen was 66, and she spent her final seconds in a state of chaos, likely not even understanding what was happening as the world collapsed around her. Her death was more than a tragic accident. It was the end of a life that had stirred both admiration and controversy. Born in Memphis in 1955, Gwen struggled with weight as a young woman and later earned degrees in dietetics and nutrition. She used her faith to shape the Way Down Workshop, a Christian-based weight loss program that taught people to eat only when hungry and to rely on prayer instead of food. It exploded in popularity during the 90s, spreading to thousands of churches and making her a household name. Her 1997 book, The Way Down Diet, sold over 1 million copies. But with fame came criticism. Gwen was accused of using church money to fund a lavish lifestyle, and her Remnant Fellowship Church, founded in 1999, was called a cult by many. She denied the doctrine of the Trinity, encouraged extreme obedience to leadership, and supported members accused of child abuse and murder, even funding their legal defense. Her second marriage to actor Joe Lara caused friction in her church, especially since she had preached against divorce. Joe, who once played Tarzan on TV, had limited flying experience and was reportedly unprepared for high-pressure flights, something his own instructors had warned him about. Still, Gwen trusted him with their lives. On that morning flight, under thick clouds and rising speed, Joe couldn't tell which way the plane was facing. He mistakenly believed they were climbing when they were actually diving. By the time he realized the truth, it was far too late. The plane hit the lake with brutal force, ending Gwen's life in an instant. Her death left behind unanswered questions, grieving followers, and a sharply divided legacy. To her supporters, she was a spiritual guide who changed their lives. To critics, she was a controlling leader who blurred the lines between faith and power. But no one can deny that Gwen Shamblin Lara's story is unforgettable, filled with influence, fame, and a shocking end that took not just her life, but the lives of those who believed in her. June Thorburn, a beautiful and talented English actress whose life was stolen in the most heartbreaking way. On November 4, 1967, June was flying back to London from Spain on Iberia Airlines Flight 062 when the plane crashed into Blackdown Hill in Sussex, killing everyone on board. She was just 36 years old and 5 months pregnant with her third child. She had 2 young daughters waiting for her at home and a husband, Morton Smith Peterson, who never saw her again. June wasn't sick, she wasn't slowing down, she was full of life, excited about the future, carrying a new baby, and returning from what should have been just another normal trip. But something went horribly wrong. The crash took not only her life, but the life of her unborn baby, and left behind a broken family and a world that never got to see all that she could have become. June's death was sudden, violent, and final, no warning, no goodbyes, just gone. Her loss is still felt today by her children, her grandchildren, and her fans who remember her glowing screen presence. Born on June 8, 1931, in Karachi, back when it was part of British India, June was the daughter of a British Army colonel. She grew up in India, jumping from one boarding school to another, even getting expelled from 10 of them, showing early on the wild and headstrong spirit that people would later admire in her acting. She was writing plays by age 7, starring in homemade films by 2, and skiing in the Himalayas before most kids learned to ride a bike. When her family moved back to England, she chased her dream. At 20, she moved to London and married Alden Richard Bryce Harvey, with whom she had her first daughter, Heather. After a divorce, she moved back near family, rebuilt her life, and eventually returned to London, where she met her second husband, Morton, and had another daughter, Shalene. June's career took off in the early 1950s, and by the mid-decade she was landing lead roles in films like Touch and Go, True as a Turtle, and Fury at Smuggler's Bay. But it was her role as the Forest Queen in Tom Thumb that made her truly unforgettable. She also appeared in British television, including Danger Man in 1960. She had a unique spark on screen, bright, confident, and always full of heart. But none of her success protected her from fate. That night in November, as her plane approached London, something went terribly wrong. Iberia Flight 062 slammed into the hillside, and June, her unborn baby, and 36 others lost their lives in an instant. There were no survivors. A memorial was later built at Brookwood Cemetery, but the real loss can't be measured in stone. It's in the birthdays missed, the movies she never made, and the children she didn't get to raise. June Thorburn was more than just an actress. She was a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mother. Her death was one of those awful moments that leaves everyone asking why. And even now, all these years later, she is still missed, still loved, and still remembered as one of the bright stars who left us far too soon. Marília Mendonça, a gifted Brazilian singer and songwriter whose life was cut short in a devastating tragedy that left an entire nation in shock. On November 5, 2021, at just 26 years old, Marília boarded a small plane with her uncle, her producer, and 2 crew members, heading to Caratinga, Minas Gerais, where she was scheduled to perform a concert. But just moments before reaching the airport, the plane crashed near a waterfall, killing everyone on board. It was later revealed that the aircraft had struck a high-tension cable connected to an electric tower, causing the crash. Videos showed her walking to the plane with her guitar in hand, completely unaware that it would be her final performance, her last day alive. The news hit hard. Her fans couldn't believe it. Her friends were in tears, and her family was shattered. She had a 1-year-old son, Leo, waiting for her at home. What was supposed to be a night of music and celebration turned into a national tragedy. Her death wasn't just the loss of a young artist. It was the loss of a cultural icon. Born on July 22, 1995, in Christianopolis and raised in Goiânia, Marília started writing songs when she was just 12, contributing to some of Brazil's most popular hits before ever stepping into the spotlight herself. In 2016, she rose to national fame with her live album Marília Mendonça, Ao Vivo, featuring the hit song Infiel, which became one of the most played songs in Brazil and earned her triple diamond certification. Her voice was powerful, raw, and full of emotion. Fans felt like she was singing their stories. She became known as the Queen of Sofrência, a title earned through her heartbreaking, soul-bearing ballads about love, loss, and betrayal. But beyond her music, Marília stood for something more. She gave a voice to women in a male-dominated industry, broke barriers in sertanejo music, and empowered countless fans with her strength and honesty. Her talent was recognized with multiple Latin Grammy nominations and a win for Best Sertanejo Album in 2019. In her short career, she became the most streamed artist in Brazil and one of the most followed women on Instagram. Her personal life had its share of ups and downs. She was engaged, became a mom, and worked hard to balance her booming career with motherhood. When she passed, tributes poured in from across the world, from singers like Anitta and Dulce Maria to athletes like Neymar, who simply tweeted, "I refuse to believe it." Over 100,000 people attended her funeral in Goiânia, lining up to say goodbye to a woman who felt like family. Her memory lives on through her posthumous music, through a planned film about her life, and through the countless fans who still sing her songs and remember the pain and beauty in her voice. Marília Mendonça didn't just sing about heartbreak. She became part of our own. She died on her way to do what she loved most, leaving behind a legacy that will never be forgotten and a little boy who will grow up knowing that his mother was one of Brazil's brightest stars, taken far too soon. Samantha Smith, a young American girl who became a powerful voice for peace during one of the most tense times in world history, and whose life ended far too soon in a tragic plane crash. Samantha was only 13 when she died on August 25, 1985, along with her father and 6 others, after their commuter plane, Bar Harbor Airlines Flight 1808 crashed short of the runway while trying to land at the Auburn/Lewiston Municipal Airport in Maine. It was a rainy night, the pilots were inexperienced, and the crash was so severe that the bodies were badly burned, with investigators needing dental records to identify them. Some believe there was foul play involved, especially in the Soviet Union, where she was deeply loved and honored. But the official report pointed to pilot error and weather as the cause. They had been returning home after filming a segment for Samantha's new TV show, Lime Street, where she had just started acting alongside Robert Wagner. Her death shocked the world, not only because of her age, but because of who she was and what she had come to represent. Samantha Smith wasn't just a child actress. She was a symbol of hope. She first caught the world's attention at only 10 years old when she wrote a letter to Soviet leader Yuri Andropov during the Cold War, asking him why he wanted a war and if he would work for peace instead. Surprisingly, Andropov wrote back and invited her to visit the Soviet Union. In July 1983, she and her parents traveled to Moscow, Leningrad, and the Artek camp on the Black Sea, where she was treated like a diplomat and connected with kids her age, showing the world that peace could begin with a simple act of kindness and curiosity. After her trip, Samantha became known as America's youngest ambassador. She appeared on TV, wrote a book with her dad called Journey to the Soviet Union, gave speeches, and even proposed that US and Soviet leaders swap their granddaughters to help prevent war, saying no one would bomb a country where their granddaughter was visiting. She later began acting and was working on her first major role in Lime Street when her life was cut short. Her funeral was attended by over 1,000 people, including representatives from the Soviet embassy, and messages poured in from leaders like Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev. She was honored with statues, stamps, streets, a mountain, a diamond, and even an asteroid named after her. Maine celebrates Samantha Smith Day every year, and her legacy as a brave, kind-hearted girl who believed in peace still lives on. But none of that softens the pain of how she died, burned in a crash, alongside her father, after a bright future was just beginning. Samantha Smith wasn't just a child with a message. She was proof that even one small voice can be heard across the world. And that makes her loss feel even heavier. Anna Janter, a beloved Polish singer whose life was cut short far too soon in a tragic plane crash that shook the world. On March 14, 1980, at just 29 years old, Anna was flying back to Warsaw from a 3-month tour in the United States, eager to return to her little daughter Natalia, whom she had missed terribly. She had spent weeks performing in Polish clubs across Chicago and New Jersey, raising money for her daughter's eye surgery and dreaming of a peaceful home life. But her return never happened. LOT Polish Airlines Flight 007 suffered a fatal engine failure while approaching Oaksey Airport, and the plane crashed, killing all 87 passengers, including Anna and the entire U.S. amateur boxing team. Her mother Helena and her 4-year-old daughter were waiting at the airport with flowers when the tragedy unfolded right in front of them. The pain of that moment, especially for her little girl who didn't understand what was happening, was something no family should ever endure. Anna's last days were filled with longing and love. She had written letters from America saying how much she missed her daughter, how she packed secretly at night to avoid making her cry, and how she promised this would be her last trip away. Born in Poznan in 1950, Anna showed musical talent early on and joined a music group at just 14. She studied piano, sang in student clubs, and eventually took on the stage name Anna Janter in 1972 when she officially became a professional singer. Her big break came in 1973 at the Polish Song Festival in Opole with her hit Najtrudniejszy Pierwszy Krok. And from there, she rose fast, winning hearts with songs like Tyle Sonka WK Misi and Nick Ni Mozvichny Truak. Her warm voice, emotional lyrics, and honest performances made her one of the most loved Polish voices of the 1970s. She was married to composer Jerzy Kukulski, who helped shape her sound, and together they had Natalia, the daughter Anna cherished more than anything. But despite all her success, Anna remained grounded, sensitive, and deeply connected to her family. Her final concert in New Jersey, just 2 days before her death, ended with her thanking the crowd, saying she was happy but also sad because it was her last show. She was looking forward to going home. When they found her body after the crash, she was still holding a rosary tightly in her hand. That detail says everything about who she was, a woman full of love, faith, and hope. Her funeral brought out 40,000 mourners, all grieving the sudden loss of a voice that had brought them so much comfort. And though her life was short, her music still lives on, passed down through her daughter Natalia, who grew up to become a singer herself, carrying her mother's memory into the next generation. Anna Janter's story is one of talent, kindness, and a mother's deep love, stolen by tragedy, but never forgotten. Fanny Cano, a beautiful and talented Mexican actress and film producer whose life ended in a fiery plane crash on December 7, 1983. Fanny had boarded an Iberia Boeing 727 in Madrid, Spain, heading to Rome on her way to India, a country she deeply loved and often visited for spiritual peace and meditation. But that morning, in the foggy air of Barajas Airport, her plane tragically collided with an Aviaco DC-9 that was taking off at the same time. The crash caused an explosion so massive that 93 people lost their lives in the fire that followed, including Fanny, who was just 39 years old. Her husband Sergio, who was supposed to be with her, missed the flight due to a last-minute work call, unknowingly escaping the tragedy that took his wife. Fanny Cano's death shook the entire Mexican entertainment industry, especially because she had stepped away from the spotlight in her final years, devoting herself to a quieter, spiritual life after decades of fame. Born in 1944 in Utamo, Michoacan, she was one of 6 children and came to Mexico City with dreams bigger than the small town she came from. She studied psychology at UNAM, but found her true calling in acting when she was still a student. Her career took off in the early 1960s with roles in films like Entrega Inmediata and El Cielo y la Tierra, and from there, she quickly became a household name. With her striking blonde looks and strong on-screen presence, she lit up Mexican cinema and starred in over 40 films and several hit telenovelas, including Ruby, Yesenia, and Muñeca. She wasn't just a pretty face, she proved herself as a serious actress with roles that demanded emotional depth, like in Los Perversos, where she played a mentally unstable young woman, and in Zona Roja, where she took on the life of a prostitute in a coastal town. But beyond acting, Fanny was also a producer and co-founded her own production company, showing her strength behind the scenes as well. By the late 1970s, she had taken a step back from fame, married Sergio Luis Cano, and began travel. Jenny Rivera, the beloved Mexican-American singer, songwriter, actress, and businesswoman whose voice, strength, and spirit left an unforgettable mark on the world of regional Mexican music. On December 9, 2012, after performing to thousands of fans in Monterrey, Jenny and 6 others boarded a small Learjet bound for Toluca. But just 15 minutes into the flight, contact with the plane was lost. Hours later, news broke that the jet had nose-dived into the mountains near Turbide, Nuevo Leon, killing everyone on board. The wreckage was so severe that investigators struggled for years to understand what happened. No clear cause was found, but the crash raised serious concerns. The plane was over 40 years old. The pilot was 78 with a restricted license, and the young co-pilot wasn't even certified to fly in Mexico. Jenny was only 43. Her final days were full of both personal heartbreak and professional triumph. Just before the flight, she had publicly spoken about filing for divorce from her 3rd husband amid rumors of betrayal. And yet she stood tall that night on stage, pouring everything into what would be her last concert. Born in Long Beach, California, Jenny's life was never easy. She became pregnant at 15, raised her daughter as a single mother, and still managed to graduate as valedictorian and earn a business degree. She started selling CDs at flea markets, and through sheer determination, broke into the male-dominated banda genre. People told her she wouldn't make it. Venues refused to book her, radio stations threw her CDs in the trash, but she never gave up. Her 2005 album Parandera, Rebuild Y Atrevida, made her a household name. She won countless awards, sold over 15 million records, and starred in multiple reality shows. She gave a voice to women, to survivors, to anyone who had been told they weren't enough. Offstage, she built businesses, raised 5 children, and poured herself into charity work, becoming a national voice against domestic violence. But even with all the fame, Jenny never stopped being real. Her music was full of pain, love, mistakes, and strength. Her life had been marked by abuse, betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, yet she kept going, always rising from the ashes. Her death shattered millions, especially because it came so suddenly, just as she was preparing to take her career even further. Today, Jenny isn't just remembered for her powerful voice or hit records. She's remembered for her resilience, her honesty, and her fight to be heard in a world that tried to silence her. Her tragic death in that crash took away a star far too soon, but her legacy still lives in every song she left behind, and in the millions who still feel her words like they were written just for them. Gianna Maria Honore Bryant, known to the world as Gigi, a rising star in basketball, a daughter, a sister, and a young girl with dreams far bigger than her years. She was only 13 years old when her life was cut tragically short on January 26, 2020, in a devastating helicopter crash in Calabasas, California, that also took the life of her father, NBA legend Kobe Bryant, and 7 others. They were on their way to one of Gianna's basketball games at the Mamba Sports Academy, where Kobe was coaching and Gigi was expected to play, wearing her number 2 jersey. The helicopter flew into heavy fog, and despite the pilot's attempt to climb out of the low visibility area, it crashed into a hillside at high speed, killing everyone on board instantly due to blunt trauma. Gigi was wearing her game uniform when she died, ready to do what she loved most, play basketball. Her final moments were spent beside her dad, the man who taught her the game, who believed she would carry on his legacy in women's basketball. The two shared a special bond rooted in their love for the sport. They studied games together, trained together almost every day, and shared a vision of her one day playing for the Yukon Huskies and eventually making it to the WNBA. Gianna had a fiery spirit, a competitive heart, and talent that turned heads even at such a young age. She was already being scouted by college coaches at 11, and anyone who saw her play knew she was going to be something special. Born on May 1, 2006, Gigi grew up surrounded by her father's legacy, but was determined to build her own. She attended Harbor Day School in Newport Beach, played for her school team, and was involved in student council. Her nickname, Mambachita, inspired by her father's Black Mamba persona, became a symbol of the future she was destined for. The world mourned not just a little girl, but the enormous potential she carried. Murals were painted, sneakers were designed in her honor, and the WNBA made her an honorary draft pick alongside her teammates who also died that day. Yukon saved a seat for her at their game after the crash, placing a jersey and flowers on the bench where she should have sat. Her mother, Vanessa, left to carry the weight of this unimaginable loss, has kept Gianna's memory alive through the Mamba and Mambachita Sports Foundation, working to support young female athletes like the one she lost. Gigi wasn't just a promising athlete, she was a light, a joy, a dreamer who studied the game like a pro and smiled like a child. Her death, so sudden, so cruel, left a hole in the hearts of everyone who watched her grow alongside her father. She was going to change the world of women's sports, and though her time was short, her legacy will never fade. She wasn't just Kobe's daughter, she was Gianna Bryant, and she had her own story to tell. Grace Moore, the beloved American operatic soprano and actress who brought opera to everyday people, and who died far too soon in one of the most heartbreaking ways imaginable. Grace was only 48 when her life ended in a fiery plane crash on January 26, 1947, just outside Copenhagen, Denmark. The day before, she had performed to a sold-out crowd of more than 4,000 people in a stunning concert that ended with thunderous applause. That joy turned into tragedy the very next day when she boarded a KLM DC-3 flight bound for Stockholm. Shortly after takeoff, the plane stalled at just 150 feet in the air, crashed, and exploded upon impact. Every single person on board died instantly, including Grace and Prince Gustav Adolf of Sweden. Her remains were only identified by her personal belongings. Grace Moore's death sent shockwaves through the world. It was unthinkable that a woman who had just been celebrated on stage could be gone the next day. But her final performance wasn't just any concert. It was the final note in a life filled with both triumph and turbulence. Born Mary Willie Grace Moore on December 5, 1898, in Slabtown, Tennessee, she grew up in a strict Baptist home, moving from small towns like Knoxville and Jellicoe before heading to Washington, D.C. to pursue music. From her first job singing in nightclubs to pay for lessons, to her breakout on Broadway in 1920, Grace worked tirelessly to build her dream. She trained in France, sang across Europe, and eventually conquered the opera world with performances at the Metropolitan Opera and beyond. Her voice made her a star, but it was her determination and charisma that made her unforgettable. She starred in films like One Night of Love, earning an Academy Award nomination, and during World War II, she sang for Allied troops and supported countless charitable causes. Her nickname, the Tennessee Nightingale, fit her perfectly, a small-town girl who sang her way into the hearts of millions. Yet for all her success, her life was filled with struggle too, battling expectations, fighting for respect, and often pushing against the rules of her time. Grace was bold, sometimes controversial, but never boring. Her autobiography, You're Only Human Once, captured the fire inside her. And then, just like that, it was over. One minute she was waving to fans, and the next, her name was on the list of victims. Her body was returned home and buried in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but her voice still echoes in recordings, films, and memories. Grace Moore didn't just sing, she soared. And though she fell from the sky in the cruelest way, her story still rises, reminding us that even the brightest stars can be gone in an instant, but their light never really fades. Harriet Quimby, a fearless American aviator and journalist whose bright and groundbreaking journey ended in one of the most tragic and shocking plane crashes of her time. On July 1, 1912, Harriet, just 37 years old, took to the skies during the Boston Aviation Meet in a brand new two-seat Blériot monoplane, with event organizer William Willard sitting behind her. They had just flown out over Boston Harbor when, at about 1,000 feet in the air, the plane suddenly pitched forward without warning. First, Willard was thrown out, and then Harriet was ejected too. Both fell to their deaths while the aircraft, surprisingly, glided down and landed mostly undamaged in the mud below. It was a horrifying scene that left the crowd in shock, with no one expecting that such a celebrated and skilled pilot could be lost in an instant. Investigators later found a control wire jammed in the rudder mechanism, possibly causing the plane to pitch so violently. It's heartbreaking to think that something so small could end the life of a woman who had accomplished so much. Harriet's final flight came just months after her most daring achievement, flying solo across the English Channel, making her the first woman in history to do so. She had taken off from Dover, England, in April 1912, navigating fog and freezing cold with only a compass she had just learned to use, and landed 59 minutes later on a quiet beach in France. Sadly, her incredible accomplishment was barely noticed by the press, as the Titanic had sunk just the day before. But to those who knew her, Harriet was already a legend. Born in Michigan in 1875, her early life was humble and uncertain, with no official birth records and years spent moving from town to town. She eventually moved to San Francisco and then New York, where she became a writer for Leslie's Illustrated Weekly, publishing over 250 articles. But everything changed when she attended an air show in 1910 and became obsessed with flying. She trained at the Moisant Aviation School and in 1911 became the first American woman to earn a pilot's license. She wasn't just talented, she was magnetic. With her signature plum satin flying suit and confident presence, she drew massive crowds at air shows, raced other pilots, and performed night flights before thousands. She even wrote about the dangers of flying, fully aware of the risks. But she believed in aviation's future and encouraged women to take the skies. Her life was full of firsts, and her courage paved the way for generations of female pilots to come. But it all ended far too soon, not because of her skill or carelessness, but because of a mechanical flaw and the lack of basic safety like seatbelts. Harriet Quimby's story is a mix of courage, brilliance, and heartbreak. She lived fast, flew higher than anyone expected, and died doing what she loved most, but she deserved so much more time. Her name may not be as widely remembered today, but in the world of aviation, Harriet was, and will always be, a true pioneer who soared ahead of her time and left a legacy written in the sky. Aaliyah Rambin, a Swedish actress, athlete, and beauty queen who once stood at the center of the world's spotlight, but whose life ended in a horrifying and heartbreaking tragedy. On June 19, 1996, Aaliyah, along with her husband G. David Shine and their 34-year-old son Frederick, lost their lives in a devastating plane crash just moments after takeoff from Burbank Airport in California. The small, single-engine Beechcraft Sundowner they were flying suffered sudden engine failure, forcing the plane down before it could gain safe altitude. Frederick, who was piloting the aircraft and had a valid license just like his parents and brothers, tried to regain control, but there was nothing he could do. The plane crashed almost immediately, killing all three on board. The crash was a massive shock, not only to those who knew them personally, but also to people in Sweden and around the world who remembered Aaliyah from the days she was crowned Miss Universe in 1955. She was only 62 years old and became the first Miss Universe to ever die, a sad and painful moment in pageant history. Her final days were spent as she had lived much of her adult life, quietly, devoted to her family, and involved in cultural work, including her role at the Los Angeles County Museum. It's tragic to think how a simple flight to San Francisco could turn into such an irreversible loss. Born in Ängd, Sweden, in 1933, Aaliyah grew up in Uppsala and from a young age was known for her strong will and incredible athletic ability. She was the Swedish national decathlon champion and a standout in gymnastics, skiing, and track and field. At just 21, she became Miss Sweden, and later that year, Miss Universe, captivating the world not just with her looks, but with her energy and charm. During a press event after her win, she even performed a handstand, showing the world that she was no ordinary beauty queen. Her victory earned her a contract with Universal Pictures, and she moved to Hollywood, where she studied acting alongside future stars like Clint Eastwood and Barbara Eden. She had small roles in a few films, including The Benny Goodman Story in Istanbul, but her path changed forever when she met David Shine, a wealthy hotel owner and producer. They married in 1957, and she chose to leave acting behind to raise their family. Over just 5 years, Aaliyah gave birth to 6 children, including twins, and became a full-time mother. Despite her past fame, she lived far from the limelight, focusing on her home, her children, and charitable work. She often traveled back to Sweden and even hoped to live there part of the year once her children were grown. But that chance never came. Her death wasn't the result of illness, recklessness, or carelessness. It was a cruel accident, a terrible moment where something mechanical failed, and nothing could stop what followed. Losing her, her husband, and her son all at once was a nightmare for their remaining children and for everyone who knew them. Aaliyah Rambin wasn't just a beauty queen. She was a mother, an athlete, a quiet force of strength who gave up her career for the people she loved. She deserved many more years, but instead her story ended in the sky above Los Angeles. Today, we remember her not just for the crown she wore or the film she appeared in, but for the life she lived after the spotlight faded, full of family, love, and grace, and for the tragic way she left this world far too soon. Camille Muffet, the Olympic champion swimmer from France, whose life was cut tragically short at just 25 years old in a horrific helicopter crash while filming a reality TV show in Argentina. Camille, known for her powerful freestyle strokes and quiet determination, died on March 9, 2015, when 2 helicopters collided mid-air during the filming of Dropped, a show that placed athletes in extreme environments. The accident happened in the remote region of Villa Castelli, and investigators later revealed that both pilots failed to realize how dangerously close they were flying. With no evasive maneuvers attempted, the choppers clipped rotors and plummeted to the ground, killing all 10 people on board, including Camille, Olympic boxer Alexis Fastini, and champion sailor Florence Arnaud. She had been so full of joy just days before, telling her friend it had been one of the best weeks of her life. Camille had already lived a life that most could only dream of. Born in Nice in 1989 to a nurse mother and a physical therapist father, she began swimming competitively at a young age and first shocked the swimming world at only 15 by beating 2004 Olympic champion Laura Manado. Though she started her career as a medley swimmer, she shifted to freestyle after struggling to maintain her pace in longer events. It was the right choice. Her hard work and countless hours in the pool paid off with 3 medals at the 2012 London Olympics: a gold in the 400-meter freestyle, silver in the 200-meter freestyle, and bronze in the 4x200-meter freestyle relay. She became only the 3rd French athlete to win 3 medals at a single Olympic Games. Camille retired from competitive swimming in 2014, just 2 years after reaching the pinnacle of her career. She said she had achieved everything she dreamed of and was ready to explore life outside the pool. The reality show she joined was supposed to be a fresh chapter, something fun, something different. But instead, it led to a senseless and heartbreaking end. Her final moments weren't in the water or on a podium, but in a tragic accident that took her from the world far too soon. France mourned one of its brightest stars, a woman who not only broke records, but inspired a generation with her strength, discipline, and quiet grace. The Olympic pool in Nice now bears her name. But what remains in the hearts of those who followed her journey is the image of a young woman who chased greatness and found it, only to be stolen away when her story was just beginning. Florence Artaud, a legendary French sailor whose fearless spirit helped her break through one of the most male-dominated sports in the world, but whose life ended in a heartbreaking and shocking way. At just 57, Florence was killed in a tragic helicopter crash in Argentina on March 9, 2015, while filming a reality TV show called Dropped alongside other French athletes. 2 helicopters collided shortly after takeoff in clear weather and exploded in the air, killing all 10 people on board, including Florence. It was a devastating end for someone who had spent her entire life surviving the most dangerous seas and beating impossible odds. Known as the fiancée of the Atlantic, she had already brushed shoulders with death before. First as a teenager, when she spent months in a coma and years in recovery after a near-fatal car crash, and again in 2011 when she fell overboard alone at night off the coast of Corsica. She managed to survive that time by calling her mother on a waterproof phone she had bought just days earlier, clinging to life in the freezing water for hours until she was rescued. That experience made her feel like miracles were possible. Born in Boulogne-Billancourt in 1957, Florence was introduced to sailing as a child by her father, a publisher who worked with famous sailors. At just 18, she crossed the Atlantic for the first time and soon began building a name in solo ocean racing. Her greatest triumph came in 1990 when she became the first woman to win the brutal Route du Rhum solo race across the Atlantic, finishing in just over 14 days despite equipment failure and a hernia. That same year, she also broke the solo transatlantic speed record. But even with her fame, Florence struggled to find sponsors and support, often being overlooked in favor of men. She never gave up though, and kept sailing on her own terms, winning respect not just for her victories, but for her bravery and honesty about her struggles. She openly spoke about dealing with alcohol, heartbreak, and losing her projects due to lack of funding. In her final years, she worked on causes she cared about, from defending whales to writing her story. Just days before her death, she had finished her new memoir, Tonight, The Sea is Black, which was released after she passed away. It's painful to think that someone who gave so much to the sea would die far from it in a sudden fiery crash on dry land. Her ashes now rest partly on the Île Sainte Marguerite and partly scattered at sea, where she truly belonged. Florence Artaud was more than a sailor. She was a survivor, a pioneer, a fighter, and a symbol of courage. Her life was full of danger, triumph, heartbreak, and strength, and her tragic death took from the world a woman who had already proven that she could beat anything. Guadalupe Larriva, Ecuador's first female and first civilian defense minister, who died in a tragic and deeply disturbing helicopter crash that claimed not only her life, but also the life of her 17-year-old daughter, Claudia Avila, and 5 Army officers. The accident happened on January 24, 2007, just 9 days after she took office, during a nighttime military training exercise near Manta Air Base. Two military helicopters collided mid-air while attempting to land, crashing to the ground in flames. The blades are believed to have struck each other due to a failed maneuver, and reports later revealed that proper safety measures weren't followed, and rest times for the pilots had been ignored. Guadalupe and her daughter never should have been in those helicopters that night, and the heartbreaking truth is that their deaths could have been avoided. A later court ruling confirmed the state's responsibility, acknowledging that military leaders failed to protect them. Guadalupe had only recently spoken out against renewing Ecuador's contract with the U.S. military, which allowed American troops to operate from the same base where she would later lose her life. Her final day was filled with official duties, military visits, and a symbolic flight as part of a celebration. But it ended in a disaster that shook the entire nation. Born in Cuenca in 1956, Guadalupe was a brilliant academic, holding a Ph.D. in geography and working as a university professor. She rose through the ranks of the Socialist Party and became a respected voice for social justice, transparency, and civilian control over the military. Her appointment as defense minister marked a historic moment for Ecuador, breaking long-standing gender and political barriers in a country where the military had been behind the fall of multiple presidents. Despite doubts and resistance from some military ranks, she stepped into the role with determination and courage, promising to fight for fairness, better wages for soldiers, and a more accountable system. She lost her husband 8 years before her own death, and was raising 2 children while carrying the hopes of a new generation. Her death was not just the loss of a leader, it was the silencing of a mother, a fighter, and a woman who stood for progress in a country still finding its way. The impact of her loss was so strong that President Rafael Correa promised to replace her with another woman from her hometown, calling her a maternal heart stronger than a general's hand. Guadalupe Lariva's life was full of promise, and her death was full of pain, but her legacy remains as a reminder of what she stood for: strength, courage, and the fight for what is right, even in the face of great risk. Marie-Soleil Tugas, a bright and beloved actress and TV host from Quebec, whose life was tragically cut short in a heartbreaking plane crash on August 10, 1997. She was just 27 years old, full of life, passion, and kindness when she boarded a small plane with her partner, filmmaker Jean-Claude Lauzon, for what was supposed to be a peaceful fishing trip in the northern wilderness of Quebec. Jean-Claude, an experienced pilot, was flying the plane himself. Friends Patrice Lecaire and Gaston Lepage followed in another aircraft and watched helplessly as the plane carrying Marie-Soleil suddenly struck a mountainside near Ungava Bay. The crash itself wasn't immediately fatal. The wreckage showed the cabin wasn't badly crushed, but just 5 seconds later, a violent fire broke out, leaving no chance of survival. Investigators later said the weather was clear, and there were no mechanical problems. The cause may have been a simple miscalculation or visual error during a low-altitude turn. It was a cruel and sudden end to a woman who brought so much joy to others. Marie-Soleil had been a part of Quebec's entertainment world since she was a child, first appearing on TV at age 11 in Peau de Banane and growing up in front of the camera through hit series like Chambers en Ville, Chop Suey, and Jasmine. She later became a household name as a co-host on Fort Boyard and Les Derouillards, and she used her fame to make a real difference, working with charities like Operation Enfant Soleil, promoting safe sex and responsible drinking, and always standing up for children and health causes. She wasn't just a performer, she was someone who cared deeply about people, using every bit of her platform to help others. Her death sent shockwaves across Quebec and Canada. While Jean-Claude's funeral was kept private, thousands showed up to say goodbye to Marie-Soleil outside a church in Beloa, unable to hold back their grief. Friends, fans, and colleagues all spoke of her warmth, her energy, and her laughter. Her death wasn't just the loss of a star, it was the loss of a friend to millions. In those final moments, as the plane came down and the fire took hold, it's unbearable to imagine the fear, the pain, and how fast everything changed. She had so much more to give, so many more lives to touch, but in her short time here, Marie-Soleil Tugas made a lasting impact. She is still missed deeply, not only for the roles she played, but for the person she was behind the scenes, a light that was taken far too soon.